Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, I hope you're having a fantastic day. With the huge changes in patch 1.07, a lot of very overpowered builds are now no longer viable. So today I bring you an alternative. And you'll be very pleased to know that the majority of this build can be picked up quite early on in game. In fact, the main component, the weapon itself, can be farmed as early as Liurnia, maybe even earlier. So let's dive into it as I show you the Lightning Guardian. This is primarily a dexterity based build that leans into faith quite heavily as well, just for utility and versatility. And it is all based around the Guardian's Sword Spear. This is an often slept on weapon that is insanely powerful, especially with the keen affinity applied. As, even though it says it only has an A scaling in dexterity, it has quite possibly the best dexterity scaling in the game, with well over 800 base attack rating at 99 dex, and close to that even at around 50 dex. This build is then further enhanced with the introduction of Faith, as it allows you to use some incredible buffs such as Vike's Dragon Bolt and the Golden Vow. And both of these buffs can be used in tandem, meaning every single slash will deal upwards of 1200 damage. And this sword spear has a very unique moveset, which is in fact only shared with Loretta's War Sickle. For a halberd, its attacks are surprisingly fast, meaning your damage per second is absolutely insane. And as I say, we're then combining that with Faith, so we can use an insane amount of awesome spells. You can use a variety like you see here, going through different schools of magic, trying out frenzy spells, spells from the School of the Black Flame, and even the bestial incantations that you get from Garank. However, to keep in line with the roleplay of the Lightning Guardian, we are going to be sticking purely with lightning spells. And talking of lightning spells, there are a surprising amount of them throughout the game. You can get some of the more simple, yet still very effective ones very early on, such as the standard lightning spear, and as you're progressing through, you'll come across the frozen lightning spear, Lansax's glaive, the lightning strike, and a few others that I'm not wielding here because they have crazy high faith requirements. But you can seriously have some fun with the versatility of this build. But let's move on to where it really shines, with the weapon itself. There are two Ashes of War I would recommend with this weapon. The first one being the Sword Dance, because you can get this very early on in the game. It is in fact dropped by a teardrop scarab found near to the minor Erd tree in the southwest of Liurnia. It's actually around the back, below the cliffs, leading to a path where several jellyfish are located, just before you get to a cave. This one is great because it inherently provides that keen affinity that you want for this weapon, and it will really maximize the damage potential of your sword spear. As the Ash of War reads, you can quickly close in to perform a series of spinning upward slashes, and then follow up with an additional input to finish with a downward slash. However, later in the game, you want to move to my second recommendation, Piercing Fang, which we will have a look at now. Piercing Fang that can be acquired from the Nagakiba as part of Bloody Finger Hunter Yura's questline. And speaking of Piercing Fang, this has recently had a huge buff as part of patch 1.07. Many Ashes of War and spells have had big buffs, but Piercing Fang got one of the biggest buffs, so there has never been a better time than now to use it. And of course, make sure you're using the keen affinity to get the absolute most damage out of this weapon. And as we have moved on to the segment where we are talking about the weapon, of course, you could farm for two of them and dual wield them if you just want the absolute maximum amount of damage output from this weapon. Though I advise having a shield, making the most of the guard counter, and including that tankiness and that survivability into this monster of a build. Because then you are insanely deadly at range, insanely deadly up close, and also crazy tanky with some very powerful guard counters. So you really do have all bases covered. And as we're talking about the shield and guard counters, my shield of choice for this build is the brass shield, because it's a fairly light medium shield with 100% physical resistance, and it drops really easily from basically any Godric soldier throughout Limgrave. And as we are talking about farming the Guardian's Sword Spear, where do you farm it? It drops from basically any Guardians, and they are everywhere, which is why I say you can get this very early on in the game. But the easiest and quickest place to farm it is here at the Minor Erdtree Church at the south of the Lanedale outskirts, as there are 6 Guardians scattered around this area. And as we're here, let me go into the inventory and show off the talismans that I'm using with this as well, along with my stats. I recommend getting to at least 52 dexterity as quick as possible, because that's when the second soft cap comes into play, and each level starts to be less effective than the last. But it will continue to increase in damage all the way up to 99, should you want to max it out. Then I recommend getting at least 25 faith, so you can use both Vike's Dragon Bolt and the Golden Vow, and then pump the rest of your points into Vigor, Endurance and Mind as you see fit, to give you more survivability, wield heavier shields and heavier armor sets, and of course cast more spells without running out of mana. And then, as we're talking about the talismans, I was wielding both of the Source Seals here for the purposes of the video, just to max out my stats, but the only 2 stats you need are Dexterity and Faith. So you could swap both of these out for the 2 Fingers Heirloom, which will increase your faith by 5 and is found in the basement of the Purified Ruins in southeast Liurnia, and the Prosthesis Wearer Heirloom, which is given to you by Millicent once you finish Gowry's very small questline at the start of Millicent's own questline. Along with these 2, the other talismans I'm rocking are the Erdtree's Favour +1, just so I have a bit more health, stamina and equip load, and the final one is pretty interchangeable, but I would recommend increasing your guard counters, because guard counters, especially with this build, should not be slept on. They are so insanely powerful in Elden Ring, and I do not utilize them as much as I should, and you probably don't either. So, we've shown off the build, we've shown you how to get all the pieces you need, and the stats required to really effectively use this build. The last thing is for you to go off and do your thing and eviscerate your foes as the Lightning Guardian. Good luck and have fun. And as always, my friends, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.